Not even fame can shield humans from tragic fates. In the last decade, the world has lost stars, some beloved, others controversial, in ways that were sudden, shocking, and deeply unsettling. Freak accidents or curious circumstances, these are 5 of the most disturbing celebrity deaths that left the world searching for answers. On the morning of August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell in Manhattan. Epstein was no usual inmate. Epstein's case involved crimes of the highest order and connections to some of the most powerful people in the world. His death was followed by a storm of controversy, public outrage, and a torrent of unanswered questions. Did Jeffrey Epstein take his own life, or did something more sinister happen? Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born on January 20, 1953, and raised in New York City. He began as a teacher at the elite Dalton School, despite not having a college degree, and after being dismissed, he transitioned into finance. Over time, Jeffrey built a powerful social network, surrounded himself with wealth, and became a member of elite circles. But he wasn't what he seemed. In 2005, Palm Beach police launched an investigation following allegations that Epstein had shown inappropriate behavior to a 14-year-old girl. Federal authorities later identified at least 36 underage victims. In 2008, he pleaded guilty to 2 state felony charges and served just 13 months in jail, spending much of that time on work release. Epstein was arrested again on July 6, 2019 in New York, on federal charges of exploitation of minors. He pleaded not guilty and was held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan, awaiting trial. On July 23, 2019, Jeffrey was found semi-conscious in his cell with injuries to his neck. Authorities deemed he was at risk of ending his own life. As such, he was placed in an observation cell with lights constantly on and without access to any potentially lethal items. Just 6 days later, he was returned to the special housing unit, no longer at risk, at least according to prison staff. On August 9th, his cellmate was transferred. Despite protocol, no replacement was brought in. That night, Jeffrey met with his legal team, who described him as upbeat. He was escorted back to his cell at 7:49 p.m. Footage later showed that the guards failed to perform required checks through the night. Neither the 10 p.m. count nor the 30-minute cell checks were conducted. Instead, the guards reportedly fell asleep for 3 hours and later falsified records to suggest otherwise. At 6:30 a.m. the next morning, guards found Jeffrey unresponsive in a kneeling position, a bedsheet tied to the top bunk around his neck. He was in cardiac arrest and was transported to New York Downtown Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 6:39 a.m. His body was taken to the medical examiner's office soon after. Standard protocol was violated in multiple ways. His body was removed from the cell before photographs were taken, and the cell was not treated as a protected crime scene. 2 security cameras near his cell malfunctioned that night, and another recorded unusable footage. The New York City medical examiner ruled Epstein had taken his own life. Epstein's legal team disputed this, hiring pathologist Michael Baden to observe the autopsy. Baden later claimed that the injuries were more consistent with homicidal strangulation, citing multiple broken bones in Jeffrey's neck and questioning the mechanics of hanging from a lower bunk. A note found in Jeffrey's cell described his complaints about prison conditions, including verbal mistreatment and being locked naked in a shower cell. On August 8th, just 2 days before his death, Jeffrey signed a will transferring his assets to a trust. Attorney General William Barr called it a perfect storm of screw-ups. Investigations by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice followed, focusing on procedural failures. The 2 guards were charged with falsifying records, though the charges were later dropped after Epstein's partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, was convicted in 2021. But public skepticism soared. Within months, the majority of Americans expressed doubt about the official cause of death. Some believed Epstein had been silenced to protect powerful individuals implicated in his alleged crimes. The failure of multiple safety measures, camera malfunctions, and his ties to elite figures only fueled the speculation. The charges against Epstein were formally dismissed on August 29, 2019. Investigations then turned toward his known associates. Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested in 2020 and convicted the following year for her role in trafficking minors for Jeffrey Epstein. French associate Jean-Luc Brunel, also facing allegations of exploitation, later ended his life in a Paris jail. Jeffrey's brother Mark believes there are unanswered questions about who may have had access to Jeffrey's cell that night and whether the locked cell doors were as secure as claimed. Despite years of inquiries, the cloud surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's death has not lifted. Despite official reports, public belief remains fractured. Matthew Perry was more than just a television icon. Beloved around the world for his unforgettable role as Chandler Bing on Friends, he had also become a symbol of resilience. After decades of battling addiction, he was on his way to making a powerful comeback, clean, focused, and hopeful. But behind the surface of his recovery, a darker story was unfolding. On October 28, 2023, at just 54 years old, Matthew's life ended in a tragic way, betrayed by those who claimed they were helping him. Born on August 19, 1969, in Williamstown, Massachusetts, Matthew grew up between Canada and the United States. When he moved to Los Angeles at 15, his focus shifted to acting. He studied at the Buckley School and later honed his comedic skills with the LA connection. A failed pilot nearly kept him from Friends, but at 24 years old, he landed the role of Chandler Bing. The show catapulted him to international fame and immense wealth. For 10 years, he was part of the most recognizable cast on television. Yet fame came with a heavy cost. Matthew struggled deeply with addiction for much of his adult life. Alcohol, opioids, and later prescription medications took a severe toll. He went to rehab 15 times, spent over $9 million on recovery, and attended more than 6,000 Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. During this time, he became an advocate for recovery, earning a Champion of Recovery Award in 2013, and later writing a brutally honest memoir in 2022, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. In the message, he warned of his own mortality, saying that if he did die, it would shock people but wouldn't surprise anybody. In 2023, Matthew had been clean for 19 months. He received ketamine-assisted therapy for anxiety and depression, his last official session occurring a week and a half before his death. The substance, legal in controlled medical environments, was never intended for unsupervised use. But as prosecutors later revealed, Matthew had become entangled in a dangerous underground network that basically exploited him. Investigations revealed that in the final 2 months of his life, Matthew paid $55,000 in cash for ketamine, receiving more than 20 vials, some from doctors, others from street dealers. Among those charged were 2 physicians, a pair of dealers, and his live-in assistant. One dealer, known as the Ketamine Queen, was accused of supplying the drug on October 4th, after which Matthew suffered a seizure. Still, the injections continued. His assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, had been trained by Dr. Salvador Plasencia to administer the drug, and later admitted to injecting Matthew himself. Texts showed Plasencia referring to Matthew as a moron, while conspiring to profit from his addiction. On the morning of October 28th, Matthew played pickleball with friends. He was last seen alive at 1:37 p.m. At 4 p.m., Iwamasa returned home to find him floating face down in the hot tub. He pulled him out and called 911, but it was too late. Matthew was pronounced dead at 4:17 p.m. The autopsy found ketamine in his blood at levels consistent with surgical anesthesia. The coroner ruled the cause of death as acute effects of ketamine, with buprenorphine, coronary artery disease, and drowning as contributing factors. Though initially classified as accidental, further investigation revealed the extent of the exploitation. On August 15, 2024, 5 individuals were charged in connection with Matthew's death. Iwamasa and one dealer, Eric Fleming, pleaded guilty. Former Dr. Mark Chavez, who had falsified prescriptions, also agreed to plead guilty. Matthew's vulnerability had been targeted by those entrusted with his care. Matthew's funeral was held on November 3, 2023, at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Los Angeles. His friends' co-stars attended alongside family, while the Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush song "Don't Give Up" played in tribute to his lifelong battle against addiction. In his memory, the Matthew Perry Foundation was established to support recovery programs for others fighting the same fight. Matthew Perry fought hard for sobriety and used his platform to help others, but even in recovery, he was not safe from those who saw only profit in his pain. His legacy now includes not just the laughter he brought to millions, but also a cautionary tale about the dangers of exploitation in the shadows of fame. On July 8, 2020, a beloved figure in American entertainment vanished during what was meant to be a peaceful afternoon on Lake Peru in Ventura County, California. The day would end in tragedy, triggering a national outpouring of grief and raising urgent questions about safety at public recreational areas. Naya Rivera, born on January 12, 1987 in Valencia, California, was a gifted actress, singer, and model. Her career began early. She landed television commercials as a baby and secured her first major role at 4 years old. Over the following years, she built a steady career in television before achieving breakout fame as Santana Lopez on the hit television show Glee. For her work on the show, she received critical praise, several awards, and Grammy nominations with the ensemble cast. Naya also pursued music, releasing a single in 2013, and appeared in film projects including At the Devil's Door and Mad Families. Off-screen, she was an outspoken advocate for human rights, immigrants, and racial justice. Her memoir, Sorry Not Sorry, offered a candid look at her personal and professional life. In 2020, she was between seasons on the series Step Up, continuing her legacy as a skillful performer. That Wednesday, Naya and her 4-year-old son Josie set out for a quiet day on Lake Piru, a place she had visited many times before and considered a sanctuary. Around 1 p.m., she rented a pontoon boat and the two set off alone. 3 hours later, when the boat hadn't been returned, staff began searching. At approximately 5 p.m., it was discovered adrift on the lake's north end. Josie was asleep on board wearing a life jacket. An adult-sized life jacket remained on the boat. Naya was nowhere to be found. Jose later told investigators they had gone swimming. According to him, the boat began drifting, and Naya had helped him back on board. She was not wearing a life jacket. She boosted him up but could not lift herself back onto the boat. She disappeared beneath the surface moments later. A later statement from his father confirmed that her last word was his name. Jose recalled looking for a rope to throw to her, but was frightened by a spider on it and could not help. But even if he could throw the rope, it wasn't going to be long enough to help Naya. Authorities concluded Naya had used all her remaining strength to save her son. The search effort was immediate and massive. Despite strong winds and dangerous conditions, including underwater vegetation, submerged debris, and depths reaching 40 feet, teams of divers, helicopters, sonar equipment, sniffer dogs, and drones combed the lake for 5 days. Visibility was limited to just inches. On July 13th, a body was recovered and later confirmed to be Naya. She was found floating in the area where she was last seen. An autopsy concluded she died from accidental drowning within minutes of submersion. No injuries or intoxication were found. The tragedy devastated her family, fans, and the entertainment industry. Her parents, brother, ex-husband Ryan Dorsey, and co-star Heather Morris had joined the search. After her body was found, tributes poured in from around the world. Former castmates, musicians, and public figures honored her strength, talent, and compassion. Her ex-husband later shared that coping with her loss was difficult, but raising their son gave him purpose. Heather Morris called her the strongest person she knew. A memorial appeared under the Lake Piru sign, and the lake remained closed for weeks. Swimming was later prohibited. In 2022, Naya's family reached a private settlement in a wrongful death lawsuit. They claimed the lake lacked basic safety warnings and that the boat wasn't properly equipped with flotation devices. They described her death as preventable. Naya Rivera was laid to rest in a private ceremony at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills. Her death remains a reminder of nature's unpredictability and the immense power of a mother's love. On December 8, 2019, a tragedy unfolded at Chicago's Midway International Airport. Jared Higgins, known globally as Juice WRLD, had just landed on a private jet from Los Angeles when a chaotic and disturbing scene ended his life. At only 21 years old, Jared's sudden death shocked fans, devastated loved ones, and raised questions about drug use, celebrity pressure, and missed warnings. Born on December 2, 1998 in Chicago, Jared Anthony Higgins rose quickly in the music world. He began releasing songs in high school under the name Juice the Kid before adopting the stage name Juice WRLD, drawing inspiration from the 1992 crime thriller Juice. His talent as a rapper, singer, and songwriter positioned him at the forefront of the emo and SoundCloud rap scenes. In 2018, his single Lucid Dreams soared to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, launching him into mainstream stardom. That success led to major label deals, massive streaming numbers, and collaborations with artists like Marshmello. Yet behind the fame, Jared struggled. He began using Xanax and Percocet in his teens and had a known dependency on opioids, which continued despite moments of self-awareness. His lyrics often reflected this darkness, notably in his 2018 tribute song Legends, where he hauntingly expressed, "We ain't making it past 21." On that early December morning, Jared was returning home to celebrate his 21st birthday with friends. His Gulfstream jet, which had previously flown from Fort Pierce, Florida to Van Nuys, California, was now en route to Midway Airport. But while still in the air, federal agents tipped off local law enforcement, warning that the plane might be carrying narcotics and firearms. The pilot had reported suspicions as well. When the aircraft landed at around 1:30 a.m., officers from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Chicago Police Department were already stationed at the Atlantic Aviation hangar, prepared to stop the entourage. As agents began searching the luggage, a K-9 unit alerted them to bags containing contraband. They soon discovered a large quantity of vacuum-sealed substances, several bottles of prescription medication, and multiple loaded firearms. 2 of Jared's security guards later admitted to possessing the weapons. Witnesses reported that amid the search, Jared panicked and attempted to hide the evidence by swallowing multiple Percocet pills. Almost immediately afterward, he began to have seizures. The convulsions were violent. Blood foamed from his mouth as he collapsed, unresponsive, onto the airport floor. His girlfriend, Ali Lottie, and several members of his entourage, around 10 to 12 people in total, watched helplessly. 2 doses of naloxone, a medication used to reverse opioid overdoses, were administered at the scene. Jared briefly regained consciousness but remained incoherent and bleeding. He was transported to Advocate Christ Medical Center in Oak Lawn, where he was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. The medical examiner initially withheld the cause of death, but on January 22, 2020, it was confirmed. Jared had died from toxic levels of oxycodone and codeine. His death was ruled an accident, but the surrounding circumstances told a story of deeper personal struggles. His funeral was held 5 days later at the Holy Temple Cathedral Church of God in Christ in Harvey, Illinois. Close friends, collaborators, and family gathered to mourn the young artist who had, in his short career, profoundly impacted a generation. In the aftermath, public reaction was one of grief, confusion, and reflection. Fans revisited his lyrics, drawing connections between his music and his fate. The posthumous release of his album Legends Never Die in 2020 broke records and solidified his legacy, while 2 more albums followed, accompanied by a documentary and even a virtual tribute in the video game Fortnite. On the morning of June 19, 2016, news broke of a devastating accident involving actor Anton Yelchin. The rising 27-year-old star, widely recognized for his role as Pavel Chekhov in the Star Trek film franchise, had been found dead in his driveway. Details of the incident stunned the public, turning what seemed like a freak occurrence into a larger conversation about safety and corporate accountability. Anton Yelchin was born on March 11, 1989, in St. Petersburg, Russia, to Irina and Viktor Yelchin, renowned professional figure skaters in Russia's ice ballet. When Anton was 6 months old, the family fled to the United States as political refugees. Raised in Los Angeles, Anton began acting professionally at the age of 9. He made early impressions in films like Hearts in Atlantis and Alpha Dog, before landing breakout roles in Charlie Bartlett and Terminator Salvation. His portrayal of Chekhov in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek reboot brought him international fame. Despite his growing success in mainstream film, he also chose roles in independent projects. On the night of June 18th, Anton parked his 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee on the steep driveway of his Studio City home. Unbeknownst to him, the vehicle was not securely in park due to a known defect in its gear-shifting system. Fiat Chrysler Automobiles had recalled over 1 million affected vehicles months earlier, but Anton's sport utility vehicle had not yet been repaired. As he walked toward his house, the Jeep rolled backward down the incline, pinning him between the 5,000-pound vehicle and a brick mailbox pillar attached to a security fence. He was crushed, trapped, and died of blunt traumatic asphyxia. When he failed to arrive at an 11 p.m. rehearsal, friends went to his home and discovered his body at around 1:10 a.m. The engine was still running and the car was in neutral. Photographs from the scene revealed the devastating impact. The accident was ruled a tragic misadventure with no suspicious circumstances. Yet the shock of how it happened sparked widespread concern. The Jeep's monostable gear shifter had already been identified as a serious risk by regulators, with numerous injuries reported prior to the recall. The issue made it difficult for drivers to determine whether the vehicle was actually in park. Fiat Chrysler had issued a recall in April 2016, but software patches were delayed and had not yet reached all dealers by the time of Anton's death. In August 2016, Anton's parents, Irina and Victor, filed a wrongful death and product liability lawsuit against Fiat Chrysler. The suit stated that Anton had been crushed and lingered alive for some time, trapped and suffocating until his death. The dealership from which Anton had purchased the vehicle attempted to deflect blame, claiming he had misused and modified the vehicle. Despite this, in March 2018, a confidential settlement was reached between the Yelchin family and Fiat Chrysler. The company offered its sympathies, but the details of the resolution were not disclosed. Anton was remembered during the 2017 Academy Awards in Memoriam segment. Friends, co-stars, and filmmakers expressed their sorrow publicly. His death, so sudden and avoidable, was a loss not only to cinema, but to a young life full of promise. It led to renewed scrutiny of vehicle safety standards,